trends that our team has picked up on. I'm going to ask at the end of this slide if there's anybody who, I'm sure this is just a sampling of some of the shifts that we've noticed in light of COVID-19. Some of these things may be permanent. They may just be temporary. We won't know until we look back. But for example, healthy lifestyle choices. Just think of the shift that's happened related to healthy lifestyle up until January, February. That was really a private matter. Whether or not you counted your steps or watched your exercise or your water intake, or whether or not you smoked, or those type of choices typically were more private. Well, think just how that's really shifted here in the last month or two. That healthy lifestyle choices have become much more of a public matter. Even going out in public and going to the store. Education, what we have noticed has shifted. This has been a gradual shift over the last 5 years or so, but now it has really accelerated from institution to much more individualized, anytime, anywhere. There's 5 to 10 years ago, online education was just kind of out there, and people were starting to figure it out. And is that really, is there really a value there? And now it obviously has really become a major force. Relationships, from maybe many superficial relationships, thousands of online, friends and, Facebook, Snapchat relationship, to really fewer meaningful relationships. Collaborations. I really like how this one stated from, maybe a year ago, we would ask, well, why would we do that online? Why would we do that training online? Or why would we do that class online? Why would we do that meeting online? And it's really a shift to, well, why would we do this in person? Now, if we can do that online, well, why would we even think about getting people together in the same room to do that? Information shift from every opinion matters, everybody has their opinion and matters, to really leaning much more on expertise that matters. Social impact, influencers, such a social impact in the last 5-10 years. And that, at least temporarily, it seems to have shifted more to experts. Let's really value the science and the experts who are speaking to this situation. Heroes, celebrity, entertainment, sports heroes. Well, at least here in the last month or so, that has really shifted to healthcare first responders. It wouldn't surprise me that shifts back. After you think 9/11, that same shift happened. The weeks, months following 9/11, there's really not too much thought about sports or celebrities or things like that. And there was a real affirmation of healthcare and first responders. Well, it doesn't, take long for that to shift back. Home life, work life shift or trend from compartmentalized, for most of us, those were kind of two silos that we had our home life over here. And well, obviously, for many, many people, that's much more integrated now. And, it's not uncommon to be in a meeting with somebody and their 3-year-old comes running in with, a bowl of ice cream or something. I mean, it's just much more integrated. And then the one we're really going to focus on today is the business structure shift from complexity to agility. That organizations, companies, agencies are realizing that we may not be able to manage a lot of the complexity that we've had in place. We need to be much more agile. So like I said, that's really our focus today. Now, before we move on, as I mentioned, I'd love to hear, are there any other, anybody else have shifts, observable trends that you've noticed here in the last month or two? They may not be permanent. They may just be temporary. Let me go ahead and somebody, if anybody has something to share, feel free to unmute and speak out.
Hi, this is Cheryl. Thank you so much, Doug. I'm looking forward to this time together. I think of spirituality and how that's been really impacted as far as Christianity is concerned. I'm sure mosque and all of that as well, not being able to meet in person. So that's been a shift from being in person to having to do more online and that type of things that I have never seen in the church world in my life.
Yeah, I agree. It's really amazing. In my church, we've been doing some things online, and there's some, some fellas, and I've, giving them some good humored fun, fellas in their mid to late 70s that are now learning Zoom, and they never would have dreamed of doing that before. But yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Very nice. Anybody else observe a kind of a trend or a shift in light of COVID-19? Anybody else?
I think that is people are more willing to help, even if you call a number. If you call a bank or call a place that you need help, I noticed that people are a lot kinder and willing to take that extra time to help than they were before. By that, I mean, they don't mean so rushed, like they want to go to the next person, they stop. I noticed that we actually have a conversation instead of being treated that as another number or one more person calling to find out information. And I called the DC treasurer because I got a notification, and the person was super helpful. I mean, she went out of her way to help me and guide me through what I needed to do. And I thought, I was shocked. It was great.
I appreciate you mentioning that, Celia. And honestly, I hadn't thought about it, but as you said that, I do have a couple examples as well of, our banker and, somebody in a clinic, an accounting office. It's like, you know what? I think they gave me more time than, and maybe it's because they were sitting at home with their feet up on a footstool or something. But yeah, I think that's a great observation. Thank you so much for that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Was there another one? I don't want to. Okay, I thought I heard somebody else. Let me go ahead and move forward, but feel free to jump in at any time. So most of you probably remember this event. January 15, Sully Sullenberger landed US Airways Flight 1549 in the Hudson River. Why? Well, remember there's a complete engine failure due to striking a flock of Canadian geese. All 155 passengers and crew survived, which is just amazing, and there they all are. It's interesting, if you look way over there on the left-hand side of your screen, that one guy, I don't know, but doesn't it look like he has his computer open and he's just kind of working away right there? It's like, oh, just another day. If you look way on the other side, on the far right-hand side of our screen, it almost looks like that guy in the blue shirt. It's like he's kind of got his hand in his pocket, just kind of standing there, just kind of waiting for an Uber or something. So, but 155 passengers and crew survived. This has been memorialized in the movie Sully, which is really a nice, well done movie. So here's my question: was this destination, the Hudson River, was that consistent with their mission? And here's usually what happens when I'm teaching this, and like we offer a boot camp through George Washington University. And so when we're teaching this live with people, almost immediately there's this overwhelming response. No, of course not. That's not, the mission of US Airs. And then I'm like, okay, now just kind of reflect and think about it. Was this destination consistent with their mission? And we don't even know exactly what their mission was. Here's the lesson. We would suggest yes, absolutely. Because without even knowing word for word what their mission statement was at US Air, chances are it had something to do with passenger safety, correct? And so landing the plane in the Hudson River, that wasn't on the flight plan for the day. That's probably not how they had planned their day to go, but was it still consistent? You bet it was. And so the lesson here, due to external circumstances outside their control, boy, that's, the context we're all in right now, right? External circumstances outside of their, sometimes leaders need to change course. But you want to change course and yet still be consistent with your mission. We call this strategic agility. This ability for leaders, and not necessarily just the top leaders. So, I'm assuming most of you are in some public sector entity. So maybe you're part of a large, federal government, department, and you have your agency, and certainly we're talking the higher level, but at mid altitude as well, and team leaders and all leaders need to be able to pivot. But still be consistent with the mission of your agency, your department, whatever. So like I said, we call this strategic agility. So what do we mean? We talked to this idea of agile has been popularized over the last really kind of 20, 30 years. It actually primarily came out of well, back 100 years ago, it was primarily used related to physical agility, and the Olympics and athletes as they were growing in physical agility. That's pretty much exclusively the use of the word 50 to 100 years ago. But in the last 10 to 20 years, the word kind of took on new meaning coming out of the high-tech world, mainly software developers on the West Coast. They actually had what they called the Agile Manifesto, where these tech companies got together, like in Boulder, Colorado or somewhere, and they kind of wrote up this manifesto saying the traditional project management waterfall approach is not serving us well. We need to be much more agile in the high-tech world, in the software development world. Well, those principles now have been adopted, transferred into all sectors: public sector, private sector, nonprofit, association world. And so when we say agile, we're thinking in terms of often much smaller increments, fast iterations, frequent feedback. So we're trying to listen to our customer, and everybody on this call has some customer, maybe an internal customer, maybe an external facing customer, but that we're trying to get more frequent feedback from the customer, and then quickly adapt, being able to pivot quickly, kind of like Sully Sullenberger. And in some cases, it's in order to survive. That's where a lot of the agile principles have come out of the software world. It's like, this is not a convenience, this is in order to survive, that we just need to be much more agile. And, we, in our work with the Center for Excellence in Public Leadership and all the interactions with public sector leaders, we're hearing the same thing in the public sector world as well, that there is a need for us to be agile. Things are just too complex and they're changing too rapidly around us to just kind of continue on business as normal, just kind of write a 5-year plan and then just kind of execute lockstep on the plan. The need for agility is growing in all sectors. So with that, I'm going to introduce 5 tools. 5 tools that we think can help you during this time to help you pivot, help your leaders pivot when necessary. And so tool number 1, and this is actually the most straightforward, but the easiest tool of all 5, we just call it a priority reset exercise. We've done this with our team. We've led other teams through this exercise to document the impact of the shock. And so of all 5 tools, this is the most forward. This is about as simple as a tool as you're going to see, but it really is a good discussion starter. And so here's what the tool looks like, just as a team, so remotely, you have a Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams, whatever platform you use. Discuss and document our top priorities, and here's what we're going to compare. What were our top priorities in January 1, 2020? And what are our top priorities today? And just let your team reflect on, what was on the forefront of our mind as we turned into the new year, what we hope to accomplish this year, setting out annual goals, all those things. And now really intuitively, what have we learned? How have those priorities shifted? And let me just share, this is kind of looking behind the curtain for LBL Strategies. We're a small strategy management company. We do about half of our work is on the training and the education side through Katerina and the center. The other half of our work is actual facilitation and consulting and coming alongside of agencies and organizations. So in January, these were just some of the things we were focusing on. We wanted to update our textbook that we use with our certification course. We'd been working with Katerina, actually had a couple meetings with Katerina and Jim, Natalie, some of the team over at the center related to a strategy execution certification course, kind of a sister course, if you will. We have a strategy management course, certification course, and this would be a strategy execution certification. Like I said, we're closely aligned with the Association for Strategic Planning, and they are updating their body of knowledge guide. So we want to make sure that our course continues to align nicely with that to help people sitting for that certification. And then Katerina and I had a boot camp planned. Honestly, Katerina, I don't know, it might have even been this week or next week. It was sometime here in April or May, and I think it was in May. Well, that obviously didn't happen, but that was our focus in January, was trying to drive traffic to that 5-day boot camp. Okay, well, what our priorities look like, and again, this is just our little company, but building competencies to convert all of our strategic planning and management facilitation online. We're very capable with online training. We offer online courses, but actually doing facilitation online, we've done some of that, but most of our facilitation consulting was face-to-face. Greater emphasis on our online strategy training. So like I said, we already had that as a capability, but really putting more emphasis on that. Promotion of strategic agility training, some of what we're doing here in this session. Helping our clients reset their mindset. We put together some workshops to come alongside of our clients to help their leadership teams kind of reset what their mindset here in this season. And then ensuring team members have required technology capabilities to work remotely. Most of our team worked remotely, but it's been a long time since we'd really kind of ensured that everybody had exactly what they needed. So this is just an example from our small business. Let me kind of open up again. Anybody else want to share maybe how things have how priorities have shifted so quickly? Anybody else want to unmute yourself and kind of speak out? Nobody? I'll give one more second here.
This is Cheryl. So I'm actually working part-time with the agency that for DC government. I retired from them at the end of January, so I'm doing some part-time work with them. And our department was a learning and development department, and so most of the training that we provided was in classroom training. So the shock of the pandemic quickly shifted the work where we needed to create online training at the drop of a hat. And so where they were strategizing, all this in classroom training in January, quickly had to shift in March to doing more online. So that's been a big shift.
You bet it is. Good example. Okay, thank you, Cheryl, for sharing. Let me go ahead and continue to move forward here. So that was tool number one. Like I said, of all the tools, that was about as straightforward as you can be. But I tell you what, if you get your leadership team or your department, who those that you work with, just documenting those remotely, chances are you're going to have a pretty good eye-opening discussion. So let me move to tool number two, which is a strategy canvas. We think this is a real helpful tool to help understand changing customer needs. I know when you hear customer, whenever I teach, public sector courses, I just have to remind public sector leaders that, the word customer is transferable into the public sector. You may not use that word internally, which is fine, but just think in terms of your mission, think in terms of the work that you do, who benefits, who is a direct benefactor. And it may be internal. If you're an HR department or something, your customer may be, the other employees within your agency. Or you're an IT department, it may be a little bit of both. You have external facing services and customers, but you also serve your employees. And so whoever is benefiting from the work that you do, just think in terms of customers and think about their changing needs. So let me real quickly explain the strategy canvas as it was kind of originally designed. This is by Kim and Marbon, was actually put out probably about 20 years ago in their book of the Blue Ocean Strategy and some other publications, Harvard Business Review. And basically how the tool works, originally, this was the original design, was to think in terms of market differentiators, or in the public sector, you might think in terms of our customer needs, customer expectations. Now this is going to be Southwest Airlines is one of the examples that they use in their book. And so you just think about some of the how Southwest might differentiate themselves from other airlines. And you can see meals and lounges and seating choice and so forth. And then on the y-axis, you try to plot out relative level of emphasis. Are we, or do we place a low emphasis on this, or do we place a high emphasis on this? And so what you get then is a good collaborative tool that you're discussing each one of these customer needs related to the emphasis that we place. Now for Southwest Airlines, this first line is what they identified as the airline industry. So in general, they see that the airline industry at the time placed fairly relative or medium high emphasis, let's say, on meals, on seating choice, much higher. So the industry placed a relatively high emphasis really on all these things. Well, Southwest Airlines, they said, we're going to do things different. And so, for example, meals, it's like, they were one of the first airlines to say, maybe that's not such a high value. We're going to de-emphasize meals. And people get on board and just, throw a bag of peanuts at you and here, sit down. Seating choice, the same thing. Other airlines, a big high value on, choosing your seat, whereas on Southwest, it's kind of, hop on board and, pick out your seat when you get on board. But notice, by de-emphasizing some of these elements, then they were able to overemphasize beyond the industry on friendly service. And that was really Southwest, kind of their core competency for a long time, was they were the fun airline. They were the friendly airline. And if you flew Southwest much, you would know, you recall how, chances are they would tell jokes over the intercom or they'd have fun. My daughter and her husband, they got married a couple years ago, and they flew to, I think it was to John Wayne Airport in Orange County in California on Southwest. And about halfway through the flight attendants heard that they had this newlywed couple aboard. And so they had everybody in that little section take the empty bags of peanuts and they tied them all together and they made a veil for my daughter. And they put this veil over her head for the rest of the flight made out of these peanut bags. So, that's, you don't get that on Delta. You don't get that on some of the business airlines. So anyway, they overemphasize those. We're going to de-emphasize some things. We're going to overemphasize other things. And then notice the one, and you got to kind of think in reverse here, premium price. Well, they put a low emphasis on getting a premium price, which is kind of what they're saying there is they were able to offer discounted tickets because they were saving on some of these other areas, meals and lounges and so forth. And so there's a while I was flying from Chicago to Omaha on a pretty regular basis, and the ticket was usually like $37, $38 one way. So, you can't drive there for that. So this is a tool. This is how the tool was originally designed. And you think, well, how can we use this tool? Well, here's my suggestion on how you can use this tool with your team. All these tools are collaboration tools. They're not really tools to, just work on your own, but to collaborate. And so think in terms of your customer needs. And that's really the trick, is identifying, what are the customer needs? What have we assumed the customer needs to be? Kind of write those down along the x-axis. And then rather than comparing yourself to the industry, because that probably doesn't make sense for most of you if you're in the public sector, our suggestion is to think in terms of our old normal. Think in terms of historically, how much emphasis have we placed on some of these customer needs, customer expectations? And it's relative, from low to high, so it's not an exact science, but just it makes for really good discussion. And then move into the discussion, okay, what our new normal may look like. We may need to de-emphasize some things that we used to think were important and now overemphasize other things. And what it does, it just kind of gives you a graphic visualization as to we are strategically changing how we approach our customer. We're strategic, and I don't want to just make things up for your agency, but maybe there was something that prior to January was a really high, emphasis on something that you offered to your customer. Maybe, I'm just making this up, but maybe there's a really high emphasis on coming on in and sitting down and a face-to-face, filling out the form in person. That was just a really important, and it was well intended. It was, we want to get to know the, if you're serving, let's say, the residents of a community, and like we want to get to know the residents, we want them to come in so that we can talk to them. Well, maybe that has changed. Maybe not, but at least you start talking about it. So once again, this tool is a nice collaboration tool just to kind of think, how have the customer needs, how have those changed, and then how might we place a differing level of emphasis on each one. Okay, let me move to tool number 3, OKRs. OKRs have been relatively popular the last 3 to 4 years. They actually have been around for 20 years or more. Google has really popularized this tool to help and other high-tech companies to kind of help them be much more agile, collaborative, engaging with each other. I like this. I like this quote. Companies rarely die from moving too fast. They frequently die from moving too slowly. The Netflix co-founder and CEO, and I don't remember all of his history, but I think he came from Blockbuster. And Blockbuster is one of those examples that got disrupted by the streaming industry, obviously. So I'm going to just, I love this video. I'm going to take, it's only about a minute long, give you a chance to watch this video.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stops.
Oh, you love that video? I just love that video. And there's, lots of discussion or lots of, points that we could reflect on. But really the idea there, just the speed of change. And it really requires agencies, organizations, companies to be much more agile. And we think OKRs is a nice way to do so. So there's actually there's more than 3 books on OKRs. These are the best 3 that we're familiar with. Paul Niven probably put out the first book that I know of on OKRs. Here's his definition: a critical thinking framework, ongoing discipline, seeks to ensure employees work together, focus their efforts, make contributions, drive the company forward. And then a colleague of ours, Dan actually co-taught with me a couple times there at there at GW. He defines OKR as a formula for quantifying enterprise-wide vision, strategies, and short-term team-level goals. And then probably the best book on OKRs, don't tell Dan or Paul, we know both of them. I don't know John Doerr, but notice how Doerr defines OKRs, a management methodology that helps to ensure company focus efforts on the same important issues throughout the organization. So if you want to take a deeper dive in OKRs, I would suggest really maybe start with Doerr and then the other 2. These are 3 really good books. So what do we mean by OKR? Well, an OKR consists of 2 parts. The first part is the objective, and that's just simply stating what is it, what's the outcome that you need to achieve, and it's usually thought of in 1 quarter, like 90 days. So we're not thinking annually, we're not even semi-annual, maybe the next month or the next, no more than the next 90 days. And then how do we know, what's the key result that we can validate that indeed we have progressed in the pursuit of these goals? Now, what usually happens when we teach OKRs, people say, well, this just sounds like good old-fashioned SMART goals. And you know what? It is. It's good old-fashioned SMART goals, but there are some differences. Some of the key features that we find with OKRs that really typically you don't see in companies that use SMART goals is SMART goals usually are much longer in their nature, usually more like a year, or half a year, and they don't allow us to be agile. OKRs, because we're looking at them more frequently and it's a shorter cadence, gives us the ability to be much quicker, to pivot quicker than the kind of more traditional annual performance SMART goals. They should be ambitious. OKRs should be, if you can just kind of roll out of bed and accomplish your OKR, then you've kind of set the bar too low. They should be measurable so you can validate that, yes, indeed, I've made progress here. Transparent, and that's really one of the keys to OKRs that maybe you don't see in SMART goals, is OKRs, there's a transparency. And so in our company, we use OKRs, and I know what, my business partner, Randy, I know what he's trying to accomplish in the next 90 days. He knows what I'm working on. We know what Richard, the other Amy, the others on our team, we know what they're kind of focused on. And then that level of transparency is really nice because it gives a sense of urgency too. I know that everybody else knows what I've kind of committed to trying to accomplish in the next 90 days. They need to be easily understood, so we don't want real complex formulas. They really are change focused. So we're not just talking your day-to-day work. I need to get out this many reports in the next 90 days. Not your day-to-day. Really, what is helping move your organization strategically? So really focus on those change efforts. And engagement, what we find the real kind of the secret sauce of OKRs is it really does have a heightened sense of engagement. Everybody understands, here's how I'm contributing to the overall strategy of the organization. And these can be at all different organizational levels. Sometimes they may not make sense at the higher altitude, but certainly for a team or for individuals to think in terms of, here's my next 90 days. So let me give an example. Now, this is an example of more of a traditional approach, Amy's Ice Cream Palace. So a vision, making the world a better place, scoop at a time. And so overarching goal, an increased market share by 35%. And so one of the objectives for this organization, increase brand awareness. And that's a pretty common objective that we would see with an organization. So traditionally, then that would cascade to each of the departments, in this case, the IT department, and they may say improve social media presence and access. Okay, that's a nice, department level goal. And then that would cascade to individuals. So like the webmaster, say, I want to increase my social media knowledge, skills, and abilities. Now, this is a traditional cascading approach. Well, how does OKRs look different? Well, the top three are going to stay the same. But for the IT department, rather than, let me go back. Rather than improve social media presence, for the IT department with OKRs, it's going to be much more focused and urgent. Increase website traffic by 30% in the next 90 days. You see how that's just much more urgent and focused than improve social media presence. That's kind of nebulous, kind of isn't that nice. But when our department commits, we're going to increase website traffic by 30%. Whoa, in 90 days. Okay, that's measurable. Everybody has visibility into that. It's a sense of urgency. And then the same thing for the individual, the webmaster. I'm going to increase Google ranking of best ice cream in Chicago to page 1 in the next 90 days. So once again, OKR, what's the difference with SMART goals? Really, it's the same thing, very similar. There's just a greater sense of urgency, transparency, a much shorter cadence. You're setting much kind of a quicker look and a quicker metric as to what needs to be accomplished here in the next couple months. Okay, we have 2 more tools left. Tool number 4 is a 2x2 prioritization tool. We use this all the time with our clients. I'm going to skip through, that's another video. I'm going to skip through that. I love this quote from Sheryl Sandberg. I strongly believe in ruthless prioritization. Sometimes people think of prioritization as only doing things that will have a positive impact. But ruthless prioritization means focusing on the very best. It means figuring out 10 things on your list. If you can't do all 10, do the top 2 really well. Ruthlessly prioritizing can get hard because you're always trying to do more, but it's one of the best and most important ways. And so our emphasis here with this tool is to help your team. Again, it's a collaboration team to prioritize. So here's how the tool works. It's a 2x2 matrix. On the y-axis, you're going to be comparing initiatives and projects that you're considering doing, relative speaking, on a 1 to 10 scale, what's their overall expected benefit or return on investment? And on the x-axis, you're thinking in terms of how mission critical is each one of these compared to the other. And so then you'll come up and let's say we have 4 initiatives that as a team we're starting to think about. One of these is redesign the website. One of these is, start a new newsletter for our customers, whatever those projects are. Well, let's plot these out on this 2x2 matrix. And so we may decide, okay, so this initiative, it's really mission critical, but boy, it's expensive. It's not going to give us much return, or the overall benefit may not be that great. And so it'll be here in quadrant 3. We should do it because it's so mission critical. Initiative 2, maybe it's something here. It's not a bad idea, but it's not mission critical. It doesn't have a great return or overall benefit. Number 3 may fall here, and so what this does, it's a nice collaboration tool just to kind of help you sort out those initiatives with your team. And like I say, we do this. We'll use a big whiteboard, or you could do it remotely and move notes one place or another and just get some good collaboration around how each of the initiatives we're considering, where they fall. One last word about this tool, and then we'll go to tool number 5, is if you're using this tool, my encouragement is don't put up or don't make visible those descriptors. We need it, we should do it, and it would be nice. Don't put those up initially, just put up the X and Y axis, and then kind of have the discussion and plot out. And like when we're doing this in a live session, literally we'll use large Post-it notes and we'll plot those out on the whiteboard, and then we'll project, and people intuitively kind of know where it's headed. But here's what's happened. I learned this the hard way. If you put up those descriptors and you have "we need it" up there in the top left-hand corner, and then every initiative, as soon as you lift up that Post-it note, that's somebody's pet project. That's where they think we should put it. We need it, right? So my encouragement, just lesson learned the hard way, is not to put up those descriptors until you've plotted out, relatively speaking, where all the initiatives belong, and then put those up and get some good discussion. And chances are the team will be all nodding their heads. Yep, those that fell into that green topper, that number 1 quadrant, yep, those are the ones that we need to execute on immediately. Okay, with that, tool number 5, cut before you add. We love this tool. This tool always gets lots of robust discussion. Would we agree that no matter how large or small, every organization has limited resources, and especially now, right? So we want to review the value of the current things that we're doing. There may be some new things that we need to do. Well, before we just start doing new stuff in light of, COVID-19, in light of maybe the new normal, the customer changing needs that we talked about in the strategy canvas, maybe there's some things that we need to cut. And so can we cut current projects, tasks, activities, so that we can really execute on what's important? Some things that maybe were important in January, we may need to look at them in a new light. And so we've created this decision tree to make the cut. And I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, but again, it's a collaboration tool. So you start out by making a list of existing programs, products, services, just anything that you think needs to be discussed as potentially to be cut. And then you're going to run this through 4 different questions. Question number 1, does the work have direct and significant impact to our strategy? And by strategy, that means maybe our new strategy related to COVID-19. So that we realize that strategy may be changing. So that's where some of those other tools come in. That strategy canvas, for example, the OKRs. Is the work currently profitable? Now that's for for-profit companies. I'm going to change that question for the public sector to something a little different. So just kind of hang on to that. Question number 3, are there many others doing the work? Question number 4, is the work a good fit with our core competency? And then how this works is you just have your team kind of work through this. And so you look at one of your programs and you just start answering these questions. And if it answers yes on all these things, that's something maybe we should strengthen by differentiating. Others are doing it, either other agencies or nonprofits are doing it. So how is it that we can do it better by doing it different? If, let's say, no, it doesn't fit with our core competency, well, then we need to assess, is it worth us, is it worth us investing the time and money into making this part of our core competency? Let's go back a branch on the tree. Let's say, yes, it's profitable, or like I said, we'll change that question here a little bit related to support and funding. So, but it does have impact on our strategy. It is profitable, but nobody else is doing it, but we're good at it. Well, that's an area we want to grow. We want to, build into that area because nobody else is doing it. Or, no, it doesn't really fit with our core competency. Maybe we should be kind of phasing that out or move aggressively so it does fit with our core competency. All the way back down here, we see here's a couple that these are areas we probably should cut. Charity loss leader, let me go back to that one. So that's even if it's not profitable, but nobody's doing it and we're good at it. So that may be something that's just charity. When I was in senior living there, and when I work with healthcare clients, there are just some services that are not profitable, but nobody else in the community can do this service. So this is just charity care. Or maybe it's a loss leader. If they come in for this service, and maybe they'll stay for other things that we offer. Cut, reevaluate, and then finally, no, it doesn't impact our strategy. And on these two, whether you should kind of phase out cautiously or cut now. Now, like I said, this tool, as you see it right now, is really designed for the for-profit world. I'm going to make a shift here now, and you'll see I've changed that second question for the public sector and for nonprofit. And so it's essentially the same tool, but rather than asking about profitability, we're really asking, does or will this work that we're considering, will it easily attract support and or funding? And for some of you, that probably includes political support. Like I know we've done a lot of work with various agencies of the DC city government, and we've run them through this tool, and it's like, well, you know what, this service, maybe we could cut it, but boy, oh boy, we would, the city council really would throw a fit, or the residents of DC would really throw a fit if, this is really demanded. It's just a political expectation. So that would fall under support. Or if, maybe it is an area that, generates some revenue or some kind of a funding that you're funding overseers with, there's an expectation that this service. So those are the types of discussions you can have there with question 2. And then once again, we've changed the wording a little bit on the right, but you can see some of the suggestions then. And once again, this is a collaboration tool. So none of these tools are for somebody just to sit down at your desk and do it on your own. All 5 of these tools really are to kind of generate discussion around how do we pivot fast. So with that, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left. Let me just kind of open up the floor here. Are there any questions about any of the 5 tools or anything, more, general related to strategy management? I hear crickets. I hear crickets out there. Anybody?
It's just a lot of information. It takes a minute to absorb.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, well, I don't want to belabor the point. So Katerina has my email. Feel free to, well, I think here it is right here as well. So feel free, if you have a question about one of these tools, or if you would like one of these tools in kind of a Word doc format, I'd be happy to email that to you. So there's my email address. Feel free to write that down. Those of you that are on the phone and can't see the screen, just reach out to Katerina and her team. They can track me down. I'd be more than happy to, check